Good day, traders. Welcome to this week's RMDTRADER Weekly Market Fix. As expected, last week we saw a general correction of most markets, and the majority of the correction targets that we discussed last week have now been reached. For this week, I expect new impulse waves in the majority of markets as we see a continuation of their respective primary trends. This of course means that there will be lots of opportunities for us as traders to get on board. For this week, let's start by looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin still consolidating in a downtrend. Since we've rejected our daily 100 SMA on the 2nd of March, we've also now again rejected overage resistance, this time in line with the monthly pivot at 41,000. Currently, it looks like we should be testing this lower support at the monthly S1 and weekly S1 at 36,200. So that would be the immediate area to test in terms of support. If we do break below that, that of course will again set up our target at 27,000. Just looking in terms of resistance, we do have resistance first of all from I'd say the area close to last week's high, as well as the area coinciding with that daily 100 SMA. That would be at about 42,000. And of course, if we can manage to get higher than that, we have this overhead resistance, which should be somewhere along 44,500. Overall, trend does remain down. Selling pressure does remain intact, and I'm overall expecting price to break lower and hit our 27,000 target in the coming weeks. For now, I'd also like to look at UKOIL, something we haven't looked at in quite some time. And what is immediately noticeable here is this trading range in between our yearly R2, which is at 108, and that high that we previously saw close to 136. We've managed to retrace most of the move that we initially saw between that yearly R2 and yearly R3, with the yearly R3 clearly acting as strong resistance as you would expect it to do. It's possible that on Friday we saw some support from our yearly R2 once again, and I suspect what we will likely see this week is a move towards the weekly pivot at 118 or rather 119. From there, it's either possible that we'll see a slight correction once again, and before we see price heading back to the higher end of this trading range at the yearly R3 at 128. But overall, from here, the highest probability move would be higher once again to trade to the top of that range. Looking at the NASDAQ, the NASDAQ continues to see selling pressure with this head and shoulders looking like it should be starting to play out this week. We can see we have now got another rejection from the neckline, and of course, very importantly, the yearly S1 pivot that was at 13,450. We also have our new weekly pivot coinciding with that yearly S1. So with market open, it's possible that we see a slight correction, test the weekly pivot before it's possible that we will then see continuation to the downside with quite a few targets. But I suspect the target immediately obvious would be at about 12,250. So that would be the target I'd be considering for this week. In terms of resistance, we have the high from last week at about 13,800. And of course, any correction above that should probably find some strong resistance from that daily 50 SMA, which it will meet up at 14,470. Moving on to Forex, I'd like to look at the AUDUSD. So the AUDUSD has put in place a very proper double bottom pattern. We've also seen a break above this diagonal resistance. What we initially saw was the rejection from the yearly pivot, which is nothing that we would not expect. So at 0.741, we saw some rejection from that yearly pivot. Currently, we have now retested the breakout level of that neckline. So extend the price, the range to the right, you can see we are now testing this breakout level along with that diagonal level, as well as the daily 200 SMA, which has also previously acted as resistance. So for this week, I think if we can see any bullish price action, we will first of all head to the weekly pivot at 0.732, and from there likely higher once again towards that yearly pivot at 0.741. And finally, I'd like to conclude by having a look at the USDZAR. The USDZAR has put in a lower right shoulder than was initially expected. Initially, thought that maybe we'd have a right shoulder at our yearly pivot at 1522, but as things turned out, we see we had some strong rejection from the daily 100 SMA, which acted as a resistance, and we now saw a lower price being lower towards support from the daily 200 SMA, also the monthly S1. So I'm expecting the support to hold, and if that is the case indeed, then we'll likely see this right shoulder forming and completing, and that would set up the neckline test of the right shoulder at 1546. So that would be diagonal resistance, as well as the neckline from the inverted shoulders and the daily 100 SMA if we project that to the right. In terms of a move lower, if we do lose support from this level and we invalidate the inverted shoulders by closing above the low from the head of the inverted shoulders, that is at 1490, then the first target would be 1484. And that also fails, in the next few weeks, that's possible that we might test 1455. But overall, I do still expect a break higher and a move towards this neckline of the inverted head and shoulders at 1546. That's a wrap for this week's video. Do keep an eye out on our channel this week, as we will aim to bring you quite a few short videos as more opportunities arise. So until next time, we wish you all the best of your trading, and remember, trade smart and trade successful.